G'day guys, Happy New Year and welcome back to Oceania. I'm sure I'm not alone when I say that I really enjoy going to the airport. They're big bustling places with people running around trying to make flights off on big adventures or picking up loved ones from the arrival gates. There's always a sense of excitement in the air when you enter an airport, but there's also quite a lot of chaos. And of course there is, it's an airport, so there's a lot of people in a hurry, but it is organized chaos. Airports are typically so well set up so that people can get to and from places as quick as possible using a variety of different options. Now I wish I could say the same about Dundee Airport, because this is an airport that is chaotic in all the wrong areas. Despite having quite a lot of different public transport options, we only really have people taking the metro line. One side of the metro line, might I just add. We've also got a light rail, some people are using this. Not to mention, my least favorite thing about all this is the pocket cars. People just spawn cars when they leave the airport. So today, I'm going to be attempting to create a chaotic but organized airport with people using all forms of transportation options, creating a bustling, vibrant, and exciting place, which unfortunately turns out to be a lot harder than I expected. First order of business, I wanted to have a look at some of the planes that were arriving in Dundee Airport. We have a bit of a queue going on and all these planes are completely chock-a-block full of people. So we've got a whole bunch of passengers just awaiting to arrive at the gates. And it's mostly because we have just the one taxiway that is coming into the airport. We do have some other taxiways and they're all pointing in the right direction, they're all connected properly, but for some reason I think they're choosing just to go to this group of stands as I believe they're the closest, so the planes are just going, okay, that's the closest, so that's the ones we're going to go to. And because we also have this cargo terminal, it's causing a bit of a headache. So I decided to add in some extra ones and just play with some of the different directions, just going into some of the other taxiways. I know I'm not great at this stuff. I did a live stream and I pretty much just butchered everything and the chat was screaming at me as I was just pointing things in the wrong direction, but for some reason I will get planes land here, so it's not like they're not connected, but they're just choosing not to go here that often. They're choosing to go to the other ones. So I figured a good temporary fix is just to have a direct connection to those stands that seem to be the most popular ones, and that actually just frees up the traffic quite a bit. But to be honest, there's a whole episode here where we work on the runways and the taxiways and also adding in a bus network that's going to shuttle people around these service roads and taxiways. Just going to figure out how to do it, and if you've got any other ideas of things we can add around those parts, do let me know in the comments. It was now time to fix these super annoying pocket cars from spawning straight out of the terminal because, of course, this is unrealistic and we can't have this. Plus, I do have this multi-story car park that I created and nobody is using it. Luckily though, there is a very simple fix to this, which I completely forgot about, so thanks to everyone who suggested it in the last episode. But it's as simple as going into the Traffic President mod and enabling more realistic parking, and it just means that people are going to use these parking spaces rather than spawning cars wherever they are. Now this looks great because people are finally using the parking spaces, but it doesn't look great when you have a garage that is connected to a road like this. So I decided that I needed to add some better parking spaces and better road infrastructure so that people are actually going inside the garage rather than driving up from a main road like that. So I decided to fix up some of the roads within this little block in here, and it was just a little bit of fiddling around with the bus station, which I decided to move into a better spot, just a spot that was more accessible for people, and then also dragging a road so it actually went inside the garage, which I thought looked really cool, and it meant that the garage was actually connected to that road, so when people want to use it, you can actually see people driving on the roads within the inside of that block and going inside the garage, which just looks fantastic. And people were starting to use the bus station, which was great. I don't really know what changed there, but they started to use it. Maybe it was in a better location. I'm not really sure, but it worked, and it worked great. And speaking of working great, so does this little hotel that I placed down here. It has the Ride logo on it, which I really wanted to include. Ride's the fictional public transport company of Dundee created by Blue Thunder, so I think a Ride hotel right in the middle of the Dundee airport, I think is a pretty good fit. This though wasn't a very good fit. Me trying to include an aeroplane on a pedestal. This is the Oceania aeroplane model created by W Tiger TW. A lot of people suggesting that I include some sort of aeroplane on a pedestal as the grand entrance into Dundee Airport, which I totally think we should. I think it should go around this sort of area, but I didn't have enough room in that particular spot. I would like to include some sort of welcome to Dundee Airport or welcome to Dundee or the abbreviation of Dundee Airport, but I actually don't really know what to call it yet. So if you've got any ideas for that grand entrance, we're going to come back and work on that in another episode. I'm also going to grab a different plane model, something older, so we're not putting a brand new plane on a pedestal. Seems like a bit of a waste. I think something a bit old and disused would be a better fit. So I'll work on that a little later on. Moving back to creating our chaotic and bustling airport, the metro line was far too popular for my liking. I like that people are using the metro, but it's too many. It's like 90% of people are using the metro line. What about driving? What about the light rail? What about buses? What about taxis? You know, there's other options. How about we spread the love a little bit, please? I wanted to see a lot more people driving. I know that's very sin of me, but I kind of just wanted to see this place function like a real airport. And at the moment, they're all being good boys and catching public transport, but it's not really what represents a real life airport, particularly in Australia. So the first thing I did was I created the district policy so that it was no longer free public transport, and then I also increased the ticket prices for public transport. I know, that's pretty mean of me. And my airport is now rocking the policy that encourages more rideshare. So we're pretty much ticking all the boxes in terms of policies. Now I just need the infrastructure to handle more people driving. As you can see, we now have this ground level parking spaces, and then I needed to add some better road infrastructure for people to access this. I didn't really want people to drive all the way through the terminal just to get to the car spaces, so you can actually access these areas without having to go all the way through the terminal. Now we've also got these beautiful roads. I can't remember what they're called, but they're curbless roads so that they sit flush to the pavement, and then I've also connected them up to the actual parking lots, which I thought looked super nice. It's nice and flush, even changing the color of the asphalt to the color of the road just to make it all the same, I thought was a nice little addition. I also, for some reason, connected the bus terminal to the parking lot road, which I will end up changing the location of that just because it doesn't really make sense seeing buses come all the way through the parking lot. It's just a bit of extra traffic in a spot that doesn't really need extra traffic. You know, this airport's all about trying to make things run the most efficient as possible, and having a bus line that's connected to the parking lot doesn't make a lot of sense. So I decided to flip around our bus terminal so it's connected up to this road that I just dedicated to a bus only road, which I thought made a lot more sense because originally that road kind of didn't really have any purpose. It just sort of sat there. I don't really know why people would use it. I'm actually going to give it some extra functionality a little bit later on, but for now it's a bus road and it connects up really nicely. Well, at least I thought it was connecting up really nicely to this bus terminal, but in actual fact, buses weren't really using it quite like I had anticipated. Yes, they were going inside the bus terminal, but it just didn't really seem like they would really take this entrance into the bus terminal. You know, like why would they go there? They should probably go through the actual bus lane. So I tried to connect up this terminal to our bus lane and make it so that buses were going through there, and it kind of worked, but then they were kind of also using the parking lot as like a bit of a turnaround, which was also super annoying. So this was a real struggle to get to work because every time I dragged out a new road, the bus lane got all messed up and didn't connect up properly, and then buses were doing weird loops. You know, I just wanted them to drive straight from that bus lane into the bus terminal and pick up passengers, not running them over like that bus is doing, but going through the bus lane and entering into the terminal properly, efficiently. And I finally got there, had to drag out an extra road so that it could actually connect up. It was a bit fiddly, but we got there in the end. I also wanted to make it safer for these pedestrians so that they weren't going across that busy intersection without a pedestrian crossing like that. So placing these ones in, these are decals, and you can sink them into the ground so that you can actually hide them underneath the curb rather than sitting on top, just using move it and lower them into the ground. And then I also like to select the ones in the middle and just copy them over or just raise them up ever so slightly. And it kind of gives them a bit of a faded look, which I also really like, but it also just means that they are hidden underneath those curbs. With lots of people walking around and lots of vehicles driving around, I wanted to make it safe for pedestrians, so I'm using quite a lot of fences and I'm also using some barriers, just trying to mix it up because, you know, I've obviously could just include only fences, but I feel like these barriers around the busiest pedestrian pathways is probably going to be the best option just for safety, but it also just kind of mixes things up a little bit too. Feeling pretty happy with how things are starting to work around the airport. I got into some line work using the intersection marking tool. This is such a great mod, but it's also a great feeling when you add some of these bits in because they really bring some of these sections to life. I am using it to create a filler for the actual bus lane that, you know, trying to match the colors is not exactly right. I'll probably go back and make it totally perfect. But I really love using that filler for the bus lane. Just, you know, super nice, super easy, and you can actually just copy over the color just like that. And yeah, it just looks great. It's a nice little fill, and man, this just saves so much time. Every now and again I get a flashback back to the times where we used to have to use the prop line tool to actually drag out some of these decals instead. Man, that was, again, useful mod, but man, times have changed. With the bus situation now pretty well sorted, I wanted to improve some of the taxis coming in and out of the airport. I didn't really mind them picking up passengers straight out the front of the terminal, but I also wanted to give a bit of a taxi stand, maybe for Uber drivers or maybe for just quick pickups, probably just for taxis because, you know, this is a taxi and bus only road, but yeah, you get the idea. A little dedicated spot. And I thought this would be a good area because it is nice and close to the terminal. It is nice and safe for people to access it. There's just a couple of pedestrian pathways and crossings, but taxis weren't using it. Nobody was there. So I figured, well, maybe it was because this road was technically a highway road, so I decided to convert it into a regular road and just changing some of the restrictions so there's only taxis and only buses, and just changing some of the colors using intersection marking tool, but still no taxis were using it. I added in a pathway out the back. I added in just an absolute ton of taxi depots, which I'll end up deleting. Don't worry, I'm actually going to build something pretty epic at the end of this episode. But to be honest, the airport was still kind of a little bit dead. You know, despite my best efforts to create a lot of infrastructure for people, you know, more parking, better policies, worse policies, you could argue, you know, people weren't really using anything else besides that one metro line. That same metro line. So I did something pretty drastic and I just deleted the access to the metro line just to see what people would do. Are they going to use other forms of public transport? Are they going to start driving? Are we going to see more of a spread? You know, because obviously people were using that. It was the closest option and it was probably the most efficient way of getting there. Deleting that kind of put people in a bit of a scramble. They all just scrambled around the airport, and it was kind of fun to see, just seeing just hordes of people running around using the pathways. Some of them using it well, some of them using it kind of annoyingly, but it was a really good test to see just what people would do just in the masses. Just a mass of people just running around the airport. And I guess unsurprisingly, people were still just going to the fastest route. And I guess that is somewhat realistic. You know, obviously you're going to take the light rail if the light rail goes to your house or is, you know, an easier option. But it doesn't really take into consideration price or whether or not a friend's picking you up or whether or not you're in a car or whether or not you prefer to get a taxi or prefer to get the bus. You know, it doesn't take any consideration like that. And with most of the people being tourists, they are taking the options that go to the busiest locations of the city rather than going around the city. So in order to simulate that a lot better, I grabbed a mod that I didn't even know about. It's called the Stops and Stations mod, and it allows me to change the amount of people that will wait for those particular types of public transport. And that means that the metro line in particular, if there's 1,000 people waiting for the next metro, then John's going to decide to maybe take the bus or take the light rail, or maybe he's going to get a taxi. And that means more people are going to spread around the airport, simulating more people getting around different forms of public transport and even using the other side of the metro line, which is so nice to see. And to be honest, it was just so fun to watch people just getting around the airport in a way more realistic way. People using the pathways, people using the crossings, people using, taxi services, using different parts of the light rail and parking. And I even was able to stop people from crossing into the bus station just by dragging out a pathway that went directly from that crossing. And with that, I was really happy with how things were looking. It was now time just to add in the finer details to some parts of the airport, adding in some bollards in some areas, and also adding in just little bits of detail just here and there, just really bringing the place to life. Airports typically have office spaces for companies that operate within the airport, and I thought that this building was particularly perfect because it already has some birds that are on the side of it. Kind of just fits in with the theme. I thought was a nice little touch. I wanted this building to be the office space for Oceania Airlines, and I've got these amazing props made by Blue Thunder that I placed down just there, and I want to create a bit of a pond, so I dragged out a network, an invisible one, dropped it down so that I could drop in some water into this area, which, worked just as well as you can imagine, just flooded everything, and it was a complete disaster, so I decided to ditch that idea and raise this up instead so that we could place this on a bit of a pillar and create just a bit of a sculpture instead amongst a bit of garden bed. And this actually ended up being super nice, especially when I scaled this thing down a little bit and just put it on a bit of a slant. I think just is a really nice little entranceway. And maybe this is the, dedicated plane that we have here, or maybe we go for the plane somewhere else. I do already have a bit of an idea where I'm going to be placing that main entrance sign. I've even got some little letters that I'm going to be placing down to spell out something, maybe like welcome to Oceania, or maybe welcome to Dundee, welcome to the, something like that. I got some letters to spell it out, so I'll be placing them somewhere else. For now, this is just a bit of a bushy area. This is the entrance to the arrivals, and this is also the entrance to the cargo terminal as well. So just sort of wanted to do something a little bit more low-key, just keeping it pretty much landscaped, and just placing down a couple of extra props and some networks, so just to keep people a little bit safe driving around this roundabout. I'm not an expert with roundabouts, but I do like detailing them, especially when you combine some of these rougher ground textures and also placing down some trees alongside this highway. I think this area is starting to look pretty nice, but I did keep it somewhat bare bones because I am prepared to add some extra things, or just some extra bits of detailing, maybe a sculpture, maybe some more finer tuned trees, or maybe some warehousey stuff. I don't really know. The last thing that I want to create, I knew exactly that I wanted to build this thing. This is going to be a custom taxi depot that was going to be way more realistic and honestly pretty easy to make. This was just a matter of dragging out some of the networks and just figuring out where I wanted the invisible taxi depots to sit. This is now spawning the taxis that are going to be going into the actual airport terminal, and being invisible means that I can place down more realistic looking buildings. And it also behaves a lot better. So basically taxis enter into one way and then they exit out another way. And this is sort of similar to what I see on Google Earth, kind of going off that sort of thing. I think I know how they work. They kind of just enter in, they check in, and do other things, and then they enter out this way. To be honest, I actually don't really know. I'm just kind of making it up. But it does function, I think, how a taxi depot works. I don't know whether this is how they look elsewhere, not just in an airport, but elsewhere in a city. But it does work pretty well, and I actually would like to build a couple more of these things in other places, particularly in Sunset City. I think it'd be really fun to do something like this. But like I said, it is functioning really well because we do have them entering one way, which is the entrance into the actual airport, and then they exit into pretty much the best location to pick people up. But unfortunately still not going to the taxi rank. So if you know how they're meant to work, or maybe they just don't really work around airports, maybe that's the problem. But for now, that is pretty much it for this episode. So I do want to say a really big thank you all for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I hope 2023 is already treating you nicely. I'm really excited for the builds coming up. I've got some great video ideas and some builds that I just can't wait to get to. So looking forward to that. I want to give a huge thank you, a huge shout outs to the newest people over on Patreon supporting the channel and making videos like this possible. Ethan, Mikey, Mario A. Rodriguez, Money McBrown, Chris Nels, Scratchy, Eric, Bannon Burt, and Kay Plays. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye!